Let's pray. God, you have blessed us with a new day. You have allowed us to gather in this place with each other. And you meet us here. You allow some to join through technology, through the internet, and through television. And you are present with them. And we believe, God, that you have already been at work preparing us for this encounter. So receive our prayer and our praise. Speak to us through the words of Scripture as they are read. Grant your servant words to speak. Meet us and nourish us at the table. And prepare us to be part of all that you're doing. In Jesus' name. Amen. Forbes magazine, I don't read it regularly, but I do look at it from time to time. Forbes magazine lists Bill Gates. You've heard that name, right? Forbes magazine lists Bill Gates' fortune, his wealth, at roughly $120 billion, with a B, $120 billion. That puts him at number 6 on the list of the wealthiest people in the world. Hasn't been all that long ago, 6 years, I think, 6 years ago, Bill Gates was number 1 on the wealthiest people in the world list. He was the reigning number 1. He ranked in that position for 4 or 5 years, I believe, back in that time. Apparently, it's been a rough few years for Bill lately, and he has tumbled all the way down to number 6. When I was reading that, and it occurred to me I have no way to comprehend $120 billion. I can't begin to comprehend that much money because I've never seen $120 billion. And I certainly have never ever had $120 billion. Numbers like that mean very little to me. I think, if we're honest, I think numbers like that mean very little to any of us, to most of us, in fact. I did some fun math. Now, there's 2 words you don't hear together very often, right? I did some fun math the other day to kind of help me get my mind wrapped around, to kind of visualize what $120 billion looks like. If you had 120 billion $1 bills and you laid them out end to end, long ways, end to end, it would circle the earth. Are you ready? Any guesses? 450 times. I got my handy tape measure out because that still is difficult for me to envision. So I got my handy tape measure out and I measured this room that we're in right now. This room, this very room. And if you were to stack 120 billion $1 bills tightly stacked, like bank bundles, right? And you stack them wall to wall, 20 feet high, and 20 feet high would be about just about the top of the stained glass windows. This entire room, it would take 70 buildings just like this to hold $120 billion. And if you really want to get a perspective on that, pull a dollar bill out later and lay it up against the wall and see how tiny it really is in this room. If you were to earn each day $100,000. Each day, $100,000. It would take you 3,300 years to accumulate $120 billion. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you visualize it, 120 billion of anything is a lot. Back before Bill Gates hit it really big, back when he was only about a 50 billionaire, he was making the rounds to college campuses, and he was speaking to college students about the things which 50 billionaires speak of. And at one of these presentations, someone asked him at the Q&A after the session, how much will $50 billion buy? And that was really kind of a funny question, because it turned out that while Bill Gates had $50 billion in the bank, he didn't have any cash in his pocket. In fact, if he had been forced to make his way back to his motel or his hotel from that session, he would have had to borrow money. Apparently, even a paltry sum like $50 billion can buy a lot of stuff, but only if you have access to it, right? Bill Gates could spend millions of dollars every hour of every day and never, ever, ever run out of money. And yet at that moment, he couldn't even afford a taxi. I have a very good friend. His name is Evaristo Chikanga. Evaristo is from and lives in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has long been suffering through this crippling economic crisis for many years. Zimbabwe's inflation rate currently today is running about 102% inflation. That's crazy high, right? And as bad as that is, it's not even close to the rate in 2007 when inflation was 1,097%. And that isn't even close to the inflation rate in that country in the year 2008 when it was a staggering 24,000%. About the time that Bill Gates was making the rounds on his speaking circuit to all these college and university campuses, reports came out of Zimbabwe that for a person or a family to be able to buy a couple of loaves of bread would have cost them 50 billion Zimbabwe dollars. That would have been the equivalent of roughly 300,000 US dollars at the time. Think about that. It was as physically, actually, really impossible for millions of families in Zimbabwe living in abject poverty to actually buy a real loaf of bread, as it is impossible for us to imagine, to conceive that Bill Gates could not get a taxi. And I don't know why, but that just seems important to me. Especially as I have been reading and considering and praying about this passage that we read this morning out of Matthew's gospel. The crowds had gathered to hear Jesus and to be healed. They came from all the cities around. The day gets late. Folks are getting hungry. And the disciples, well, they're getting tired. And so they tell Jesus to send the people home so they can all get something to eat. And Jesus tells the disciples, no, you feed them. Of all the stories, of all the miracle stories in the Gospels, only this one is recorded in all four Gospels. Only this one. And not only that, Matthew thinks that this story is so important that Matthew writes about it twice. He tells it here in the 14th chapter, and then again in the 15th chapter, he tells it again. The details are a little bit different, but it's the same basic story. All we have, the disciples say, is a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. In other accounts, the disciples say something to the effect of 6 months' wages would not be enough to buy enough food for all these people. Not even for they could have just a little bitty bit. And well, you know the rest of the story. The people get fed, right? The people get fed. And the way Matthew tells the story, the disciples had a hand in this miracle. While they just brought the 5 measly loaves of bread and 2 fish to Jesus to be blessed, Jesus sends them out. They wind up going out amongst all the people, moving through the crowds, distributing food, distributing enough food that everyone had something to eat. Thousands of people were fed. Miracles. Miracles are great things. We all need a miracle every now and again, right? We all need a miracle sometimes. But as we read this story, I'm not so sure that what we call the miracle, the multiplication of the food, the converting of a few morsels into overflowing baskets of leftovers, is what is the most miraculous thing. I'm not sure that increasing the volume of food was the most important thing for Jesus. Somebody asked, how did that happen? How did he do that? I don't know. Frankly, I don't really care how Jesus did that. I think the important thing for Jesus, at least, was caring for the people. I think the most important thing was for Jesus was that the people be taken care of. I think what he's saying to the disciples then and now today is this: the people are in need right now. There's no need to send them away. You act. You need to do something. I think Jesus, at least at some level, communicates to the disciples that I know you can't do everything, but you can do something. What you can't do is just sit back and watch me do all this awesome stuff. You need to be part of what I'm doing. I need you. I'm counting on you. So go to work. Get busy. Do something. And Jesus is still telling his followers the same thing today. Thomas Long, in his commentary on this passage, writes this: with desperate and hungry people camped all over the church lawn, Jesus turns then and now to his followers and speaks what is either a cruel joke or a lavish divine humor. They need not go away, he says. You give them something to eat. And the disciples, fully aware that their own resources are not up to the magnitude of the need, nonetheless trust the jest is a divine jest, and they obey Jesus. It's funny at some point, but it's not funny. Look, I don't need to tell you that people are in crisis. We see it in the news. We see it in our own communities every day. We see it sometimes even in our own families. People are in crisis. And it can be overwhelming. And it leaves us feeling sometimes helpless. But that's not just today. That has been true in all times, in all places, forever. And I'm reminded of something which John Wesley, our founder, the founder of this movement called Methodism, Father John was passionately convinced of this. He recognized that the rubber meets the road, embodying what we say kind of thing that we believe, professing what we believe. He recognized that this aspect of faithful discipleship, in that, Wesley insists that the gospel of Christ knows no religion but social, no holiness but social holiness. John Wesley recognizes that we are impelled by our faith to do something, to care for those around us, to come alongside of those in need, to lift up, to encourage, to feed, to love, to do this in tangible ways, to be with people and care for people and love people and serve people in meaningful, tangible ways in this life right here where we are today. And we do that, and that is a way of sharing and showing the love of Jesus Christ. It is a way of witnessing to our faith of what we have received from God, we also give. Folks, we stand in the shoes of those disciples so long ago. We are surrounded by human need, faced with a challenge, and knowing that we don't have the resources in our own wealth. We don't have the resources in our own wisdom. We don't have the resources in our own strength to meet the need. We know that. We recognize that. We don't have the resources to stand up to the challenge. But still, we know, we hear in Jesus' voice, in Jesus' command to do something, you feed them. We know that our only option is not to send folks away, or to turn our eyes away from the need, or to ignore the challenge. It's not going to go away. The story of the multitudes being fed invites us to get up and throw ourselves into offering all that we have and all that we are, meager as it might be, throw fully into that effort on behalf of all God's people. Jesus' words, you feed them, they are a daily, I dare you. And the dare that Jesus presents us with is to take him at his word and to see what happens. And if we do, then we might discover, like those unaware and skeptical disciples so long ago, that we just might be on the brink of witnessing and perhaps even participating in a miracle. We get to be part of it. And that ought to excite folk. It's daunting, but it's exciting. There's a Methodist pastor, his name is Shane Stanford. He tells the story of a lady he met from South Africa years ago. Her name is Goody, Gutti. And Goody is from a large family in that country, very, very, very poor family. And her family, Goody's family, had decided very early on in her life that she was going to be the one that made it, right? That made it. So in their poverty, they saved all that they could to enable her to go to school. And she went to school, she graduated, she even went to college. She became a nurse. And she served in large hospitals in large cities for a number of years until Goody got word that one of her sisters was dying from complications because of AIDS. And so Goody took in her sister's children to raise, her 4 nieces and nephews. And over time, other sisters of Goody's became afflicted with that same horrible disease. And Goody, in time, brought in 20, a little over 20 of her nieces and nephews and raised them. She opened a clinic in that little community where they lived, where she would provide care for other HIV positive patients and their families. And news spread, and strangers, people that she didn't even know, began bringing their children and dropping them off and leaving their children on her doorstep. Till eventually, Goody had over 40 children in her house that she was providing care for. And she became so overwhelmed with the need that she reluctantly, because she was doing all she could do. It took all her time and all the resources, and she had to put up a sign on the clinic that she could take no more children. But still, the children came. But here's the thing. Other people in that community had witnessed what she was doing. Other people saw what she was doing. I saw her commitment. And the people that saw that did not want these orphan children to not be cared for, so the neighbors stepped up. And neighbor after neighbor began taking in these children. Where Goody could not help anymore, the neighbors stepped up. Goody did something. And in turn, she inspired others to do something as well. Another billionaire whose name you might recognize, Warren Buffett, a few years ago, has said that he's going to give very much of his estate to the Bill Gates Foundation. And together they're going to combine their wealth to address the needs of poverty in the world. At the news event announcing this partnership, they said, our gifts today do only a small part of what is a massive need for resources and assistance. And that's an interesting statement to me, because even with their combined wealth, their great combined wealth, these two gentlemen recognize that they can not do everything on their own. But they did something. We come to this place. We gather together with people here in this room. Some join us on the internet, on Facebook and YouTube. Some will join with us on television. And as we join together, all of us, we bring with us our very meager provisions, whatever they may be. And the good news is that somehow, in some way, God meets us here. God equips us and prepares us and provides us with what we need to go through this life. And then after our time here, we go out there. And when we're out there, beyond the walls of this building, we get to share all that meagerness that we brought with us into this place with all the people we meet out there who are in need. And we share with them because we recognize that they are God's people too. And we feed them in a sense, sometimes with real food, but also in other ways. And we get to do that. We don't have to. We get to do that every day in very different ways with all sorts of people. And we do it everywhere we go. There are people we meet every day whose lives cross paths with ours that are in need of something that we can provide, something given to us by none other than Almighty God when we are facing our own moment of need. And we get to share that. And Matthew says, as the story goes on, and after everyone has eaten their fill, the disciples move through the crowds, and they're lugging 12 big baskets of leftovers. That's the image that I hope we can keep in our mind's eye. And I hope that we can hear Jesus' words echoing in our mind's ear. I know you can't do it all. I know you can't do everything, but you can do something. Let me work in you. Let me work through you. You can't do everything. You don't have to. But you can do something. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.